I'm Steve Wolcott, co-founder of the National Mustang Racers Association, and this weekend we're celebrating our 25th anniversary. Our series started in 1999. I'm sitting here with two good friends, Rob Kinnan and James Lawrence. James, you and I co-founded the NMRA back in actually 1998. We came up with a concept. What do you remember about those early years of forming what this would become?
Probably not sleeping would probably be the first thing. I do recall one night where I spent 2 nights under my desk. I think you found me with no heater with about 46 degrees with no sleep for 40 hours. So a lot of great times, a lot of hard work.
So we went out to the World Ford Challenge in 1998. We also went out to the Civil Wars shootout that Kenny Holcomb did, and we saw the passion for late model Mustangs. We sold a bunch of T-shirts at Kenny Holcomb's race. You and I got together and we started thinking about, there's an early model Mustang club, the Mustang Club of America, but there was nothing for late models. And then I know your wheels started spinning.
Yeah, it's funny. I remember we went to Baja Fresh, I think, and exchanged all of our ideas over lunch when we were working together. Really the passion that Mustang racers have, it's unlike anything in the world. And, I think we saw that firsthand working for 50 Mustang magazine. And, you put it together, the passion, the excitement, the three of us really loving this car. It's not just a car, right? It's a movement. It's a part of people's lives.
Yeah, and I know you started Ford Performance Solutions and then ultimately sold that to Troy Bone, a good friend of ours, and then came over to work for Rob at 50 Mustang Magazine. And then you and I started talking about just business ideas, and one thing led to another. We came up with doing a club and then ultimately decided, I was living in Dana Point, commuting up to Los Angeles. You were willing to drive all the way down to Fountain Valley for the business, and things took off. Now, Rob Kinnan, you work for Rob, and so say a little something about Rob, about how we all came together as a team before we went off and did our own thing with NMRA.
Yeah, that's the first thing that comes to mind was just we already had worked together, and we already knew each other, and we knew all the great stuff, and we also knew where the warts were. And, I learned a lot from Rob. That was a time in publishing. That was kind of the heyday, the magazines and working for people like Rob and Jeff Smith and David Freiberger. You couldn't have a better group of people to learn from. So, it was, and the passion that they had for cars and for hot rodding was just amazing.
So when we came up with our idea for the NMRA, you were the editor of 50 Mustang Magazine, and we told you kind of what we were thinking, and immediately you were supportive from the magazine side. Magazines ruled the world back then, and they do, and the late model Mustang world was on fire. So you as a former magazine editor, not only on 50 Mustang, later on Race Pages, later on Hot Rod Magazine, tell us, the printed word back then, it drove people in multitudes to come out to events.
Absolutely. It's not like it is today. Today everything's online, and magazines, there aren't very many magazines that left. 50 was killed years ago. Hot Rod just recently, well, not recently. Hot Rod's still around, but that's like the only magazine left now. So yeah, it was a totally different world. Everything we wrote in the magazines, people were paying attention to, they talked to you about, that just doesn't exist now. So I think 50 was one of the last ones that stuck around. So it was good to have you guys there to work with you and actually get their word out and people to respond to it. That was really cool.
From a magazine perspective, you and Terry Shiver really supported what we were doing.
Yep.
And then, but also we had friends, even though they were competitors, yeah. Muscle Mustangs and Fast Fords, Super Ford. Mm-hmm. We had a lot of friends out there that we competed against, but they also supported it. It was a friendly rivalry, wouldn't you say?
It was. In the print world, it's kind of 50 versus Muscle Mustangs. We were all friends. We all got together all the time. They're all here now. So it's kind of a small family. We competed in the print world. Everybody thought we hated each other. We didn't hate each other. We were all good. We were all supporting one goal.
So James, one of our first sponsors was NOS. You got to know Dale Vaznayan and then his partner Mike Thermos. We couldn't have gotten this thing rolling without those guys.
Yeah, I would say every NMRA racer owes a debt of gratitude to Dale and Mike. They sold NOS years ago to Holly, but they were one of the founding fathers. I think they pitched in $5,000 to be the title sponsor. It was a symbolic, and helpful, lead sponsor. But those guys had a lot to do with our early success.
Yeah, and it helped us hire this guy. Say something about that.
Yeah, so I used that as part of trying to convince Rob to come work for us. I don't think I told Rob how big the sponsorship was, but I was telling him it was that, and Monster Energy Drink was right behind NOS.
You lied, basically.
Yeah, you know, you had to do what you had to do. But, you know, basically I beat Rob into submission repeatedly via AOL Instant Messenger to have him come work for us. And my sales pitch, it was really solid, Steve. So basically what I said is, you're going to give up all your benefits at Peterson. You're going to give up the cushy office, the paid health care, the 401k. And to top that, we're going to pay you significantly less you were earning. And we're going to strip away air conditioning, and we're going to have you drive all the way to Fountain Valley. But you got to work with your team. But, you know, I think Rob saw the passion and the vision. And, you know, one of the things that I've known and come to appreciate about Rob is, you know, while the salary and, you know, everybody's got to, you know, pay their electrical bill, Rob, for the most part, his career has followed his passion in cars. And, you know, I've loved learning from him and observing just his passion throughout the years.
And then, Rob, you came over and you became the editor of Race Pages magazine. Us having a magazine gave us a real leg up because, while we had good friends at 50 Mustang, Super Ford, Muscle Mustang, this was an opportunity for us to control our own destiny. And, Rob, you took over the reins of what was a very, very popular magazine for a long time. We now have Fastest Street Car, which has sort of taken its place, but Race Pages was your baby.
It was. That was one of the things I enjoyed about coming to work with you guys. Not just the passion for the racing and all that. Being able to create my own, not my own, but me and James's own magazine, Race Pages, basically from the ground up. That was really fun. And going to color about 6 months later, that was a really good time.
Yeah, and so James, we announced when we first started, we're going to do 2 events, the Battle in Bowling Green. We were going to do an event, World Ford Challenge had moved from Bowling Green in 98 to Chicago, Joliet in 1999. So we called Dallas Jones, put a contract together to do our first NMRA event in Bowling Green. We were going to follow that, remember, with Fords at Firebird. But then we got a call from your buddy George Case at Maple Grove Raceway saying that he wanted to partner with us on the Ford Motorsport Nationals. And I remember your reaction to that. Why don't you tell? That was a big deal.
Yeah, well, that was, first off, a legendary event. I mean, those people that remember the Ford Motorsport Nationals, it was the biggest Ford event. However, you know, they needed, you know, a more competitive, more modern drag racing format. And so, you know, it was a good partnership. But, you know, that really helped us create some legitimacy. You mentioned that contract with Dallas. I think you might remember that in the literal terms, because I think back then Dallas didn't have contracts. I think the only thing he had was your handshake. And if it was a contract, it was written on a yellow notepad.
No, you're right. Look, Dallas Jones, God rest his soul, he passed away this year. Great man, great supporter of ours. We've been there 25 straight years. We've never left Beach Bend Raceway. But George Case and the Ford Motorsport Nationals really helped legitimize what we were doing. So we rolled 3 events that year, Rob. They were all successful. I know you went to all 3 of those. And then we opened this series in 2000. We're going to do 5 events. We're going to open in Columbus, Ohio at National Trail Raceway. And things started really taking off. Could you sort of feel like this decision that you made was going to pay off?
Yeah, because, I mean, it was Maple Grove, that Motorsport Nationals. That's where James both of you put the hit on me hard, come to work. So my first race was actually Phoenix. I think I moved back to L.A. 2 weeks before Phoenix. So that was the first one. And that was
a great first race. It was only 115 degrees.
Yeah, it went from people having heat stroke in the T-shirt tent to then a monsoon blowing out over the tower. But that was a good race. That was like the first real West Coast race that everybody been crying for. We gave it to them. They kind of came out. Not as many West Coast races as I thought were going to be there, but they showed up. And KJ was there. And it was a good time. And this first one at National Trail, then, that was kind of, I know the Street Outlaw class, Mitch Maston, our tech director, he's the one that commented Street Outlaw is what's taken off. Because I think we had 30 cars there for a brand new class.
I think it was more than that. It was like 40.
Yeah, it was a lot.
Yeah.
And so that was like, wow, okay, we got something here. Got a tiger by the tail. Let's really make this happen, you know. That was a good race.
No, that was a good race. And I remember we kind of modeled ourselves after the NMCA at the time. Remember they had Heads Up News. They were the guys. That's where a lot of the big names, the Billy Gliddens and the Pat Museys and the Tony Christians were racing. Billy came over, started racing with us in 1999. But then you came up with like, okay, let's put together a contingency program and let's make this even more legit. And then I would say it was lightning in a bottle after that, wouldn't you? Because those first events in 2000, you could just feel this thing was moving fast.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's interesting. You look back, and it's like I think innovation comes from different spots. I think one thing you can do is you can look at what other people do really well, and you can figure out how do you stitch those things into your business or your offerings. And then some of it is just a willingness to innovate and figure out how to disrupt yourself. And, I think us coming from the magazine side, we had an advantage of being able to observe what other people were doing that worked really well. And then also, you know, as enthusiasts, we understood what people wanted to see. And so when you're the customer, you have some really strategic advantages because you understand the market better than just someone doing it for a profit.
Right.
And clearly, based on Rob's salary, we know he wasn't doing it for the profit,
Nope.
so it definitely had to be for the passion.
Just for the love of the sport.
Well, if you think about it at the time, too, is there was this passionate racer base. So we've got the Billy Gliddens, the Jimmy Briantes, Mike Murillo, John the Fireball Urist, Billy Laskowski, Sam LaManna. So all these characters, I mean, they weren't just great racers and competitors. They were characters. And I think the fans came out because there was this energy. There was this personality to these individuals. So what we did is we kind of legitimized, made it more professional, and these personalities really they showed such brightness.
Absolutely.
Wouldn't you agree?
Absolutely. We made the magazine, all that coverage and all the generation of publicity about the racers. Less about the cars and the technology, more about the drivers and the people behind the scenes. And a lot of them became our personal friends. Pretty much all of them did. So it's kind of like a family of reunion every single race we go to.
I like how Rob remembers this. He clearly wasn't setting the rules when he said everybody was your personal friends.
Not everybody. I know a couple people that weren't personal friends. You just mentioned one of them.
But you know what? It transcended that. To your point, I think the thing is that we all recognized, I mean, it's hard to set rules, right? And we all have, I only spent 8 years. You have 17 more years than I do. But, when there's passion, there's fire. And I mean, I say that in a real complimentary way because the reason people care so much is because it's important to them.
Right.
And if they didn't care, that's a much bigger problem. And so, whether, I've learned the last 25 years in business, when someone really cares, I mean, that's the kind of business you want to be in, is when you have people legitimately love what you're doing.
I remember, I think it was 2000, I was looking at these Renegade stackers, some of the big-time racers, thinking to myself, how can you afford to come out to all the races every year? What do you do for a living? And then I think someone mentioned it to me, or they told me, it's like, that's their annual vacation. They're basically on vacation. I'm like, they're racing hard against everybody, spending ungodly amounts of money for a vacation. So it was kind of a really heartfelt activity. They just use cars as an example. That was cool. That sort of put it into a different perspective for me.
Yeah, no, that's absolutely right, Rob. It's amazing, the commitment, the level.
Yeah.
And people make big investments, and that's part of the reason they have such a passion for rules is they have invested a lot of money in their programs, and we respect that. But James, I got to ask you, we had a lot of moments throughout the years. Name one moment maybe that stands out in your mind that you'd love to share with everyone.
We were talking about this a little beforehand. I'm going to give you 3 moments because I've thought of the third one. I think the first one was before our Bowling Green race. Ford Motorsport Nationals wasn't really our own event. We added a lot to it. We brought our heads-up classes, and we brought some new ways of marketing, but it wasn't like our first event. I remember Friday night walking up and down the streets in Bowling Green. There was a threat of rain, and I'm thinking, if it rains, we're done. We didn't have enough money to keep going if we lost that event. So, I did some praying. And I did some praying to the rain gods. But, I just thought, what a big moment, right? So that was one of them. I think the second one was we talked about that big street outlaw class in Columbus. We started that next year, and the car count, we had 300 or 400 cars. There was 40 cars or 30-something cars in street outlaw, and I'm like, we got something. And I'll tell you the last one was a collection of a lot of moments. When I look back on my 8 years with NMRA and NMCA, there's this magic that happens right before the first round of eliminations. And, you're walking through the staging lanes and you just get this, the skin, you get the hair stands up on your arms and there's just this magic that happens. And it happened to me, by the way, not just as an owner, But going through and racing in the NMCA and winning a couple championships as a racer, it's the same feeling. It's like there is something here that there's a camaraderie, there's like a sense of passion, there's just a shared vision of just, it's like you're about to go into battle, but you're like respect the people. Like when you shake someone's hand, you're going to go down the racetrack with them. Like whether you're observing or you're behind the camera, or it's just like there's a moment of those two people's souls that's just really special. And so it's not just one moment, but I remember feeling that like 50 times with NMRA and NMCA, and then again as a racer, and it's like I'll never forget.
No, that's a great observation. It's such a community that develops, even though they're fierce competitors, and then they, like you said, they shake hands and they come back and do it again the next event. Rob, what's a moment that stood out for you?
Our first award ceremony was that 2000 or 2001 when Vic Edelbrock.
That was 2001.
Yeah, Edelbrock was the sponsor. Vic got up and spoke to everybody. The whole room was just, it was, you couldn't hear a pin drop. There was just a level of excitement that was just palpable.
It was electric.
It was electric.
It was.
He told stories about Linda Vaughn and Glidden and all these people, and everybody's listening. He was like, had their attention. It was that moment. I sat back going, holy crap, this is a good deal. You know, it wasn't
Rob, that
really,
was the second award ceremony, because the first one was in the rain eating pizza on a Wednesday.
Yeah, that's right. I remember that one too.
That was the first one we did at PRI.
That was the first nice one.
That's right.
But it was a good one.
Well, I got to tell you, I've got a lot of memories. There were several what I call the shots that were heard around the world that I'd like to talk about. Like, for example, when we got the Bradenton race, the spring break shootout, that was a big deal for us because they chose us over our competitor. And there were other moments just like that. For me, it was right after 9/11. So here it is in 2001.
Yep.
9/11 happens. We're having our event in Bowling Green, Kentucky in just a couple weeks.
Right.
You and I are nervous as a cat on a hot tin roof. What's going to happen? Is anybody going to show up? And it was the biggest event we had ever had. Kind of like when George Bush threw out the first pitch at the Yankees game. It was a big deal. We were going to put on this event, and the racers came out, the fans came out, the show car participants came out. And I'll never forget Mike Washington when we had the flag and we did the national anthem followed by the invocation. It brought chills up and down my spine, and that was a moment that resonated.
Because he was at Ground Zero, wasn't he?
Yeah, Mike and I literally just talked about that because I think we had just finished tearing him down, and I think we disqualified him. And he's like, "I'll never forget you walking up to me and saying, 'Hey, you got to do this. You got to be part of this invocation.'" And he had to like kind of shake off the feeling of like, I don't remember he was disqualified or something. It was always something, but that was a big moment for sure. I mean, it's funny. You take those early years, and it's like it's a combination of all this excitement and passion, and then combined with the fact that you're doing all these things for the first time, and you really have no idea what you're doing. I mean, now I'm like 47, so it's like I've learned how to screw up almost everything that one can possibly screw up, and I know I still have a lot more stuff to learn, but it's like, running these events for the first times, every time you're learning something, and, dealing with resilience and adversity, and, trying to learn you and I, and we're all trying to learn each other, and it's like, that's where, like, really, I think the special moments come from, right? It's not that it's not special when you've got your 100th anniversary event or something, but, those early ones, your resilience is tested along with everything else.
I absolutely agree, James. And so in 2000, we first met Charlie Harmon at National Trail Raceway. And then Charlie joined our team. I think he moved out the end of 2000 and was with us for the beginning of the 2001 season. We opened up in Orlando, Florida. But say a few words about Charlie.
Charlie was a good guy because Charlie came from the NHRA, and he brought sort of I wouldn't say the expertise, but a lot of the experience from the NHRA. I think he brought some legitimacy to the whole NMRA organization, which is good. And he sort of organized the events in a different way a little bit. Just with the people he knew, he brought in like Gene Bergstrom and a couple of the significant people to help run the company or run the races. So I think, yeah, he was a very important factor in the organization's growth, and still a good friend. I think the NHRA experience and clout and respect he had there brought a lot to us. Put a lot of legitimacy to the company.
Yeah, it really did. It took our series to another level. And then we fast forward a few years. We, like I said, we had lightning in a bottle. Everything was going great. I think we got at one point to a series as big as 9 events when we went to St. Louis as well, and a few others. Then at a certain point, we announced we were going to do the NMRA NMCA Super Bowl of street legal drag racing in Joliet. That was going to be a real big deal. And right then, you and Melissa, your beautiful wife, and now the mother of your 3 wonderful children, you guys decided to start Power Auto Media. Tell us just a little bit about that, and then you stayed a big supporter of NMRA from there on, and you even started racing with our NMCA series.
Yeah, I mean, I think part of it is the passion for motorsports. Like I loved what we did here, and I will say I like being on both sides of it. The racing side is more barbecue and beer, maybe a little more fun. The barbecue and beer happens later if you're actually on staff. It tastes just as good though. But just a lot of really wonderful years, and I feel like my heart's always been, with this series, and the feeling like in 2016 and 18 to come back and like win a championship in NMCA, obviously sister sanctioning body, but it just felt like really a really fun way to really feel like what it felt like for a racer to win. I mean, it was fun to feel that feeling because I was always the one handing them the trophy and the check, and so it was kind of fun to be on the other side of it. But it's funny, talking about Charlie. Charlie's one of those guys that I think also was driven by a lot of passion. And this staff, you mentioned Gene Bergstrom. I mean, there's this staff. There's been so many amazing people on this staff, from all the way back to 1999, and it's as much as I think we did help kick this off, and Scott, Sparrow, there was a group of people that were very, very early on board, but there's a lot of people that this is a passion project for them, and it's not that they don't cash the check at the end of the weekend because they deserve that, but it's really they do it out of a love for 25 years of dedication to Ford racing.
And then Rob, you worked with NMRA, editor of Race Pages, editorial director of Fastest Streetcar, both magazines, and then you left in 2005, am I correct, to go to be the editor of Hot Rod magazine?
2004. I got an offer I couldn't turn down with editor of Hot Rod. That was 2000.
Air conditioning. That was his offer.
What's that?
Air conditioning.
Air conditioning and actually a pension and a retirement, yeah. In a magazine that I've been reading since I was 12 years old. I couldn't turn that down.
Well, when I first met you, you were working on Hot Rod magazine,
yep.
And it's still great to see some of the guys around that are out there. And so I'm going to kind of fast forward just a little bit, but NMRA, those early years were just incredible. Yeah. And then we got into the 2008, 2009, the housing crisis. People wondered about that. Charlie and I were kind of working things and doing a lot. And then in 2013, Raleigh Miller took over our event division, and we kind of reinvented who we were. And here at Summit Motorsport Park, Bill Bader, who's the best in customer service, took me aside and said, you guys have something special here. He was going to give me some advice to help take it to the next level, and I think that's what we've done. How does it feel now, 25 years later, to see what this has become, something you had a hand in creating, and now to see 25 years later, we got a reunion going here. The pits are packed on both sides of the facility. Fans are out here. We got so much going on. How's that feel?
It feels good. It's the fact that 25 years later it still exists and is this big and is popular, and the magazines are still going well. Everything's going really good for NMRA, NMCA, the whole company. Makes me feel good to know I had a hand in the very beginning of it, and it helped me look back on those years much kinder. I mean, I've always looked at them kindly, but it just puts. James keeps talking about passion. I think my passion is still high, gets higher every time I come to a race, and see the pits. The size of the vehicles, everything is just so much better. They're so much more extreme, I should say.
Yeah, it's really exciting. And James, I mean, so I talked to him, 2013, Raleigh comes in, we reinvent the event division. You then raced with us, not only NMCA West, but NMCA. You've seen what this has become, but to see NMRA 25 years later, what are your thoughts?
I mean, it's one of the longest running sanctioning bodies in drag racing history. Yeah. And that's awesome. I mean, it's just, it makes you feel good for sure. There's a lot of cars in the pits. There's a lot of trailers of people that have NMRA. I mean, the Facebook group that, you kind of put together for this 25th anniversary was really cool. There are people that have T-shirts from T-shirts that I designed, which is really scary because I was not a good designer. And I don't know why anybody would buy a T-shirt that I designed. Looking back on it, I'm like, God, that really doesn't look good. But I'm glad someone still has it in their closet.
It's hindsight.
For your Surgeon General's warning with Elias Delatorre's car like that, Les Bear, get the hell off the couch, Crazy Yates. I actually will say, I will argue they're some of the best shirts we've ever had. And I love seeing them out here. And so we're going to keep this thing going. We have a passion for it. This weekend, we've been reinvented. We're more like a festival-style event where we've got drag racing. We had a Bigfoot car crush. We got reunion groups. We got autocross. We have a midway. We got a car show. That's the future of NMRA. And really, our goal is to keep this going for another 25 years. And who knows, maybe we'll see ourselves go longer than that. Great to see James. Great to see Rob. We co-founded it. You joined on as a partner. Both of you guys went on to bigger and better. I'm still doing this. I love it. This is my career until I retire. And I just appreciate you guys so much. You know, I love you. I love you. And my love to Charlie Harmon as well, and the rest of the folks that had a hand in this, all of my crew and staff. I just appreciate you guys so much.
And you're not allowed to retire. You got to stay on for a while.
I'm going to stay on for a while, James.
25 years from now, I'm going to come to Norwalk, and I expect to see you right here, Steve, for the 50th.
Well, we couldn't do it without all of our great racers and fans. We love you too, and thank you for helping us along the way.